Well, good afternoon, y'all. My name is Tarik Whitmore. I'm leading the young adults here at New Life Church, NLYA. If you're in the building, can you make some noise for me real quick? I love y'all. College students, young professionals, 18 to 20-something. It says student ministry stuff. I have a new title. They put both my titles on the screen. So ignore that one. This is the correct one. It's crazy around here. Everybody, we wear multiple hats. But yeah, I'm excited to be talking to you today. And Pastor Mike and Bonnie are taking a little bit of a break this weekend. I don't know what they're doing. They're probably at the beach right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they came to the office, this week with a picture of Pastor Mike on a surfboard. I wouldn't be surprised. He's liable for sure to do that. Yeah, man. So we're in this series called Say Yes, and I feel like for the past 6 months, 8 months, even almost a year, really, we've kind of been in this season where we've been hearing from God, like in a major way. Like as a church, we've been hearing from God, as a staff and as a preaching team and as a worship team and in our various ministries, we've been hearing from God, and in our families, we've been hearing from God, and I know that you have been hearing from God in this season, regardless of if you've been coming here for a year, you've been coming here for a day. We've just been in this season as a church of hearing from God, and now it seems pretty clear that we're in a season of responding. That we've heard from God, we've kind of gotten impressions of what He's wanted from us and what He's calling us to, again as a church and as individuals, and now we get the chance to respond. And so that's what this series is really all about. This Say Yes series is about us responding to God and responding with the right answer, which is yes. Pastor Tom Lane from Gateway Church in Dallas, by the way, that's my hometown. Shout out Triple D. He did an amazing job last week of kind of unpacking what it means to say yes to God and the different yeses that we give to people. There's the yes of appeasement, where you kind of just say yes to get somebody off your back or to get them to stop talking. There's the yes of agreement, where you see something and you think, oh, maybe somebody says, oh, we need somebody to do something about that, and you're like, yeah, somebody should do something about that. And you're kind of like looking around. You want to get on that? And then there's the yes of commitment, where you make that yes of agreement, but then you actually put action behind it. And so we kind of agreed with him last week that, man, we want to make that yes of commitment, where we don't just agree that something ought to be done, but we actually take it upon ourselves to be the ones that do it. And so during the series, our goal is not to define what that yes is for you. What do I mean by that? Well, you may have not even said yes to God yet. You may still just be figuring this thing out. And so if your next yes, if your next response to God is to simply receive Jesus and be water baptized, we want to equip you to be able to do that. We want to give you an opportunity to do that. If your yes looks like serving, if your yes looks like going out to the serve wall and picking a card and just kind of responding to the need that you may have seen in an area of ministry, we want to equip you to be able to do that. We've been hearing from God. Now we're in a season of responding. And so whatever that looks like for you, we're not here to try to tell you what that is, because we believe you already know what that is, that God's already spoken that to you. And so we want to give you the opportunity and encourage you to respond with a yes. And so given that we've been in this series of saying yes, we're kind of going back and talking about the different yeses that have been in the Bible. And today we're going to be talking about easily one of the largest yeses. So are you guys ready to get into the scriptures? Awesome. That's the right answer. Y'all are sharp. I love it. So go ahead and turn with me to Genesis 6. We're going to be in the story of Noah. And in case you've never read this story before, or you haven't seen the movie Evan Almighty, I can go ahead and try to give us a little bit of a background to what's going on. So I'll try to make this short because we don't have a whole lot of time. But Noah lived in one of the darkest times in human history, ever recorded. In fact, the scriptures actually tell us that things had become so chaotic on the earth that in Genesis 6:5 it says, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. See, the sin that had entered into the world through Adam and Eve had spread through generations. It had completely consumed all of humanity. And this is hard for us to understand because we live in this sort of like post-resurrection world where we have the church and we have the Holy Spirit and we have the gospel. But what we need to understand is that this was a world with no love, no compassion, no value of human life whatsoever. And it was marked throughout by violence. And so God, being sorry that he had ever, he said that he was the Bible says that he was so grieved over this situation that he was sorry that he had even made man. And so he makes this plan to wipe humanity out with a flood, to completely destroy all living creation. And when I read that, at first I thought, God, that's kind of harsh, but as I began to think about the reality of what that world must have been like, I'm very confident that it was inevitable. They were going to destroy themselves. And so we come upon Noah. Genesis 6:9, it says, Noah was a righteous man, the only blameless person living on earth at the time, and he walked in close fellowship with God. Noah was the only person that had any regard for God, the only person that had any relationship with God. He was the last hope, literally the last hope for God to restore humanity back to himself. And had he waited a little bit longer, more than likely, because Noah wasn't the only one. Generations before Noah, there were multiple people that had relationships with God. But as time went on and as sin became rampant, the numbers dwindled until it was just one. So it was really only a matter of time before that flame of hope was eventually snuffed out. So God did what he had to do. He made a plan. He would destroy creation with a flood and proclaim judgment on the world. But in the same breath that he proclaimed judgment, he also proclaimed mercy. In the same thought to destroy the world, he also made a plan to save it. And he would do this through Noah. And long story short, really, he has Noah build an ark, a giant boat to withstand the flood. He has them loaded up with 2 of every creation and essentially ride it out. And I kind of imagine it playing out something a little bit like God approaching Noah and saying like, well, Noah, I've got this plan to destroy the world, and it's looking like we're going to have some weather. And then Noah's like, what's weather? And then God's like, don't worry about it, just build a boat. And Noah's like, what's a boat? And God's like, right, okay, just build a giant wooden box that can float, and then bring 2 of every animal on board, and you and your family are pretty much about to go on the weirdest cruise ever. And then Noah was like, what's a cruise? And God was like, just forget it. Just do what I tell you, okay? And so, today's message is about saying yes when it doesn't make sense. For my note takers, you can title it that. Saying yes when it doesn't make sense. How many of you realize that sometimes the facts aren't enough to make a decision? Especially with the Lord, especially when God asks you to do something, because faith is so critical to our relationship with him, the facts just aren't enough. The facts were, historians believe at least, Noah had never seen a drop of rain in his life. It made no sense. I mean, he couldn't even conceive in his mind what rain looked like or what a flood looked like. And historians also believe that he lived in a desert area, that he really had never seen a large body of water, so he had no concept really of what a boat was. All he knew was what an ark was, because it was just a wooden box. Essentially what I'm saying is all the facts pointed to it making absolutely zero sense for Noah to build a giant boat in the middle of the desert with the expectation of rain. But because he wasn't looking through the lens of the facts, he was looking through the lens of his faith. We see that his decision impacted generations, and we see that very clearly because we're all still here, and that it rescued his family. So that brings me to my first point. Your yes will make a difference for future generations. So when God flooded the earth, Noah and his family, they load up on the boat and they get the animals all with them, and they ride this thing out. And then when it's over, God ends the story. He ends the narrative with this promise. He says this. He says, I've placed my rainbow in the clouds. It is the sign of my covenant with you and with all the earth. When I send clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear in the clouds, and I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures. Never again will the floodwaters destroy all life. See, after the flood, God made this covenant with Noah because of Noah's obedience, because of Noah's yes, despite all the facts concluding and leading him to a no. He doesn't look at them. He looks at his faith and he says yes. Because of that, after the flood, God makes this covenant with Noah. And really, he doesn't make this covenant just with Noah, but with the entire earth forever. Right? This covenant's not only with Noah, but it's with us because we still see rainbows. Okay? That he would never send another flood. If Noah hadn't said yes to God, we wouldn't be here. And because he did, he made a way for us not only to still be on the earth, but to be reconciled back to God through Jesus and to spend eternity with him. Your yes makes a difference for future generations. There's this story about a young man who was walking in his neighborhood. He's walking on the sidewalk, and he looks over and he sees his older neighbor, man in about his mid-80s, and he's tending his garden, he's tending his lawn, and he's seen him do it before. He's seen him mow, he's seen him water, but he hadn't seen him work this quite hard. I mean, this man was on his knees. He was digging up, he was pulling up weeds. He was digging these holes, and he was so careful about it, and he was so concerned, and he was sweating, and he was getting dirty. I mean, the young man had never seen his neighbor work this hard towards working on his garden. In fact, he thought that was kind of, he was in the season of his life where that kind of stuff was over. But no, here he was working painstakingly to plant these little apple saplings in these holes that he had dug, and he's tending to them so carefully. And the young man, just so confused, is like, okay, I get it, like maybe you want to have a nice yard, but you don't actually expect to eat any of the apples from these trees, kind of implying that God wasn't going to be around when those trees finally produce fruit, which is rude. Do not say that to a person, like, ever. And the old man looks at him. He gets up off his knees. He kind of wipes the sweat off his forehead, and he looks at him with pure confidence, and that look that older people give younger people when they know they don't get it, but they have compassion on him anyway. They're kind of like, okay, listen here, young blood. And he looks at him. He says, no, I don't expect to eat these, but someone will. See, your yes, when we say yes to God, it makes an impact on the next generation. And it's okay that we can't predict or foresee it or see the size or the level of our impact. Noah couldn't either. All he knew is that he was saying yes to God. His focus was in the here and now. It was on being obedient in what God asked him in the here and now, trusting that God would take it and use it, right? Because how many of you know that our God is in the business of taking small human effort and multiplying it to yield giant God-sized results? Can I get an amen on that one? That's what he did with Noah's yes. That's what he'll do with yours. And if we could talk for a second, we're a very fruitful church. People are having babies all the time. The New Life family is constantly growing. It's expanding every week. And I swear there are some families where every time, I don't know if they're adopting or if they're just in really good shape, but every time they walk in, they got another baby with them. I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know how it's physically possible, but their families are just growing and growing and growing. And man, when you look at it and when you think about it through the eyes of faith, man, there are people that can't even walk yet, that can't even talk yet, that some that aren't even born yet, that are going to spend eternity with Jesus because some of you said yes to bubbles, dancing, Bible stories, and praying with little ones. How amazing is that? They don't even know what's coming for them, y'all. They don't even know. They're going to learn, though. So allow me to speak for those generations, for our future lawyers, for our future doctors, for our future lawmakers, for our future teachers and fathers and mothers and pastors. We need you. We need you. There's no other way we can reach our potential, that we can be all that we were meant to be in Christ without you. You don't have to see it right now. We don't have to know all that it's going to become. That's not really what's being asked of us. All that's being asked of us is that we would have a spirit of willingness. Look at Noah's story. Look at a rainbow in the sky and believe that the Lord will take our small yes and he'll use it to transform future generations. For those of you that are taking notes, this is my second point. Your yes will make a difference for your family. Genesis 7:1 reads, "When everything was ready, the Lord said to Noah, 'Go into the boat with all your family, for among all the people of the earth, I can see that you alone are righteous.'" Noah was selected to build the ark because of the way he was living, and because of that obedience, his entire family was saved. He was the only righteous man. His family was running around and being fools like everybody else. But because of his obedience, their lives were saved too. And they got to take part in God's story. So my mom, my sweet mama, Rhonda Taylor, we call her Little Ron. She's probably watching right now. She got saved when she was 28. I'm 22. That means she was only 6 years older than I was when she came to actually learn about who Jesus is, what he did for her, and to believe that for herself and receive that forgiveness and give her heart to God. She had just moved from Dallas, Texas, or she had just moved to Dallas, Texas from Brighton, Colorado, and a friend from work had just invited her to church. And it was actually in a women's life group that she got saved, that she gave her heart to the Lord. And a couple years went by, and she started to feel this burden to begin serving, actually. And when I was talking to her on the phone, and as she was telling me this story, she just kept talking about how she was just so grateful for what Jesus had done for her, that he had looked at her and been patient with her, and in her words, put up with her for so long, and then loved her enough to go to the cross for her sins and want to be with her and walk with her through the rest of her life. She was so grateful for that she just wanted to give back. That was kind of her mentality. She just wanted to give back even an ounce of what to God, what he had given to her. But she had a dilemma. Being a single mom of 3 boys, working like 60 plus hours a week, she had no time to spend really with her sons, me and my brothers, except on the weekends. So when you're looking at the facts, Sundays were actually an obstacle for her. There was every reason not to serve, right? Family's important. Go be with your family. Spend time with your sons. But she didn't look at it through that lens. She looked at it through the lens of faith. And so, it was a practical need. It wasn't something crazy spiritual. She didn't hear the audible voice of God. She had a desire to serve. She had a yes in her heart. And then she saw a practical way where she could answer with that yes and still be able to spend time with her boys. So she started doing kids ministry. And it's actually for the reason that my mama was my very first Sunday school teacher. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was sweet. I know it was. The first time I even heard the story of Noah's Ark was from her in class. The first things I learned about the Bible were from her. It was actually her obedience to the Lord that, her response to God's impression on her heart that planted the seeds of faith in me, that continue to grow and produce fruit even to this day. And, if I can just be real with you guys, given my family history, I'm supposed to be a lot of places right now, but preaching on a stage at New Life Church is not one of them. And so my mom's act of obedience, her willingness to say yes to God, at least for me, changed the trajectory of my entire life. Some of you are the only Christians in your family. And there's nothing you want more than to see that parent or that sibling or that child or even your spouse. There's nothing you want more than to see them experience the same freedom, the same forgiveness that you felt, that you've received from Christ. And you know, they've watched you give your life to the Lord. They saw that initial yes, and they were like, okay, you're on this new Jesus thing. That's cool. You're going to church. That's all right. You probably think you're better than me, but it's whatever. And they saw you change your attitude. They saw, you know, the difference in your walk, and they saw you say yes to that. But maybe like Noah, it's this next yes. It's the response to what God's laid on your heart right now that is going to change the trajectory of your family. That'll turn the tide of your family, because God rewrote the story of mine with my mom's obedience. He'll do the same thing for you. And I wanted to add, one of the last commandments that Jesus gave to his disciples in John 13:34 through 35, he said this. He said, now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Do you know what Jesus had just got done doing before he gave this commandment? Washing their nasty feet. That's gross. He served them in the most scandalous way. You didn't only, in that time, only the lowest servant in the household washed the feet. But he served them. And that's what he used to point back and define his love. And then he said, you love each other like this? Then when the world looks at you, when the world sees that, then they'll know that this whole Christianity thing is legit. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He didn't say exactly that, but basically that. See, serving is what Jesus said would mark us to the world. And it says way more than any sermon you could share with your cousin on Facebook. I'm just being honest with you. It speaks a better word. This was his design from the jump. This was what he said would mark us, would make us look different, that would draw people to us, that would draw our family members to us. Saying yes can make a difference for your family. And lastly, you can say yes at any age. Genesis 7:6 says that Noah was 600 years old when the flood covered the earth. Noah was 600 when the flood came. I don't know if there's much more to be said about that, really. He was 600. Okay? None of us are going to live to 600. You can eat all the kale and spinach you want. You're not living to 600. The keto diet is not magical. It can't stop time. I don't care what your grandmama said. There's not enough Vicks Vapor Rub in the world to get you to the big 600. You're not making it. I'm sorry. I love you. It's not happening. I'm a fool, yo. All right. The scripture's clear that even if we did make it, even if by some chance we did make it to 600, we still wouldn't be disqualified from being able to be used by God. See, the things that prove to be obstacles for us in the natural, they can't do anything to hinder our impact when we're being used by a supernatural God. You're never too old to serve. With God, this story rings so true. With God, one person can make a difference. Regardless of your past, regardless of your family situation, regardless of your age. You're never too young to make a difference. I'm talking to all the 1-year-old babies in the room. Get off the bench, get in the game, start serving. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That was messed up. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so maybe you can be too young to serve, but not as young as you think, right? In John 6, Jesus stood in front of 5,000 hungry men, plus women and children. So really somewhere around 10 to 15,000 hungry people. And instead of, he's God, he can do whatever he wants. He has power over creation. He break the laws of nature. Instead of like sprouting up like an Acapulco or like I'm going to do my best, Taqueria Jalisco, which is what I would have done. Those of y'all watching online don't get that joke because you're not from Corpus. He doesn't do that. No, he takes a small boy's Lunchable of bread and fish and multiplies it. Why? Because our God desires partnership, and he's willing to use whoever's willing to be used by him. No matter how old, no matter how young. BuzzFeed, the website that has all those funny lists and everything that you always see on websites, and you're like, how do they know what I'm looking at? Anyway, they did a segment on individuals that despite their age were accomplishing just amazing things. And so I wanted to share a couple of those with you. Ruth Frith was over 100 years old when she started breaking world records in shot put and javelin. First service, Alex said, I don't even know how to shoot a shot put. Is that the word? I don't even know how to throw a shot put. I don't either. I've never done that before. She started when she was 73. Mosiah Bridges opened his own bow tie company at 9 years old. Look at that man. He's fresh. He's sharp. He's looking good. And he's getting paid at 9. Probably makes more than me. At 12 years old, Thomas Suarez taught himself how to build apps and landed his own TED Talk at 12. He looks like he builds his own apps, if I'm being honest. Lastly, Yuichiro Miura was 80 years old when he climbed the tallest mountain in the world, which I'm guessing is Mount Everest. They didn't specify on the website, but tallest mountain in the world. I think it's Mount Everest. He was 80 years old. You can say yes at any age. You're never too old. You're never too young. Never too old, never too young. Please don't sign your baby up for the worship team. Real quick, I just want to share a story with you guys. In the spring of 1980, Tommy Austin and Ron Cox found themselves on a stakeout in a cold desert night in the middle of Arizona. Tommy was a U.S. Customs agent, and Ron was an officer for the Department of Public Safety. And they were talking, they were chatting, just, you know, it was a long night. They just kind of talked about the things that were going on in their lives. And as they're crouched there in the weeds, Tommy began to share a problem that he was having with Ron. A problem that he was having, he shared with Ron. Chris Gracious, the 7-year-old son of his wife's friend Linda, was suffering from leukemia, and his outlook was bleak. Doctors were telling them that he doesn't have much time to live. It wasn't looking good. And y'all can go ahead and throw the picture up of him. So Tommy started to tell Ron about all the things he was trying to do with Chris. See, Chris had really just one dream in his life. All he wanted to be was a police officer. That was it. And given his condition, it was looking like he wasn't going to be able to see that dream realized. So Tommy was trying to make arrangements to get something together where he could give Chris the police officer experience. And it didn't take Ron long listening to the story before he said, I'm in. And so he takes this to a couple of his superiors, and he was able to acquire a helicopter to transport Chris to training. His preparations were being made. The word spread throughout the ranks. One officer donated his police car for the day. Another, his motorcycle. One even gave Chris his own hat and badge to wear. The more people that met this boy, the more they wanted to get involved. I mean, there was something about this desire to make his dream come true that was just contagious. And so they did. They took him on the helicopter ride. They took him to headquarters. They gave him the tour. They let him wear the badge. They let him sit on the motorcycle and the helmet and everything. And everybody had such a good time that they didn't want it to end. So it spilled over into the next day. And more people, more officers came and got involved and contributed in their own way. A couple of them even went to the store where they made the uniforms and had them make him his own custom uniform overnight. They worked all night to be able to give him this uniform. And then they took him this little electric motorcycle and they set up a course for him, and he got to go around the course, and he got to earn his motorcycle officer's wings. And by the third day, when they went to go give him his wings, Chris was back in the hospital. And as he was surrounded by, all those officers that had fallen in love with him in such a short period of time, all those people that had worked tirelessly to see his dream come true and had seen it come true, as he was clutching those officer wings that they presented with him, and he kind of gave one last smile, and then he passed quietly that third day. He was 7. See, what those men and women did for the family, it had blessed them beyond what they could have imagined, but it had also changed them forever. Word spread even further about what was done for Chris. It inspired other DPS officers. So much so that they started meeting together, discussing how they could organize and raise money to start granting more of these kinds of wishes to children that were fighting for their lives. This organization would come to be known as the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Fast forward to 2019, organization has helped grant wishes to 315,000 kids across the United States. They've touched over 315,000 families across the nation. And for a lot of those kids, them actually granting their wish was the difference maker that led to their recovery. It literally saved their lives. Man, when they were in the desert, when they were in the weeds talking, Tommy, Austin, and Ron Cox, they could have never imagined what this was gonna become. And when they said yes to taking on this endeavor, they didn't think they were saying yes to touching 315,000 lives. They didn't think they were saying yes to actually saving some of them. They just said yes to helping one kid. And that's what God does with us. He takes our small yes. We have this human scope of vision. He has this God scope of vision. He sees the big picture. We only see our small picture. And he says, if you would just say yes, if you would just say yes and follow me, let me forgive you. Let me be with you. I've been chasing after you a long time. Would you just say yes? I promise. I mean no harm. I want to give you life. Would you say yes to following his example? Getting baptized, dying to the old life, being done with that, being raised to new life with Jesus? Would you say yes to going out into the atrium and looking at that wall and seeing if anything catches your eye, if anything has been on your heart, and say yes to serving in that area, to checking it out? I want to leave you guys with this. Don't be afraid to stand out in a crowd. Anyone who's ever allowed their lives to matter at some point has stood alone. Noah stood alone. No one encouraged him to follow God. Even when everyone else in the world stood against him, he chose to obey. Difference makers are different. Don't be afraid to do something for the first time. He didn't know what a boat was. He had never seen rain. But he was more concerned with obeying God than looking foolish, looking inexperienced. I don't know anywhere in the scriptures where it says that he had an engineering degree. He didn't know what he was doing. He just said yes. So right now, I want to invite us to stand up and go into a time of response. And I want us together to to open our hearts to God. And if we have to, we can open our hands and hold our hands open, whatever's going to help us. And just ask God one last time, what are you saying to me? What are you asking of me? What do you want to do for me? What do you want to do through me? And I pray that we would really think about that we would really ponder that we would really seek the Lord on that. And then just be obedient and respond and say yes. The altar is going to be open right here. The tables are going to be open. If this is your first time, you're going to have an opportunity to respond in several ways. You can come up to the altar and do business with the Lord. This is a place where you can sacrifice, you can lay things down, the things that you've been carrying, the things that you've been holding back on, you can lay that down here at the altar. And you can also be restored, and you can also be encouraged, and you can also have your head lifted. And people are gonna go to these tables, and they're gonna take of the bread and the wine and remember Christ's sacrifice. The biggest yes. And so again, I just want to encourage us to listen, to draw close, to see what the Lord might be saying to us, and then for us to just respond. Yeah, Lord, I'll do it. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how this is going to play out, but I trust you. I'm going to do it. Church, let's respond at this time.